Welcome to the Bhakti Zone. We are your hosts, Vishwambar and Dayal. What are we talking about today?
Well, we was discussing with Vish what we're going to talk about, and somehow as are we on the verge, on the eve of big political event in America. And I think the whole world kind of getting on their toes and see what's happening. It's a midterm election in America, and usually Bhakti, or if you are really advanced and you kind of detach from the world, detach from the mundane, you should be staying away from politics. And I think as somebody who in the world, who interact with people, still practicing Bhakti, I think what we decided to talk about today is how we could be spiritual and at the same time see the reality of things, and at the same time don't alienate one another. It doesn't matter which political belief one holds, and also see to the essence of issues rather than aligning oneself with one or another party or with one or another issue and taking the stand which is kind of set in stone, and I'm only right and you're wrong. This is all soft topics. Some things are absolute, some things are relative. And I think the biggest problem when people kind of conflate something which is absolute with something which is relative. Let's say if I say that fire is hot and it burns, you can disagree as much as you want, and you get burned. It's not up for discussion. If I say you need oxygen to survive, and if I cut off the oxygen, you would die. You might not believe in this, but if you get yourself bereft of oxygen, you will die. So we have really true facts, and nobody can argue about it. I mean, crazy people will argue about it, but it doesn't mean. So what I want us to look at, and I think that's what we decided, is to see, let's look at the facts, and let's look at the soft spectrum, basically why beliefs are so different, what is the absolute let's say authority, or the absolute physical law, is there absolute moral law, and what is a relative moral law, meaning like how relative you can go, and where is the end of it if you go into relativity towards what is good and what is bad, and what we base our belief system, and also our value system on as practitioners of Bhakti. And of course, guys, seriously, among practitioners of Bhakti that we both know, you have far left, you have far right, you have in-betweeners. Still people believe in God, people follow their sadhana, their spiritual practice, but it doesn't hinder them from being all over the place in a political, not only political and also social spectrum, I guess. So I think it's a topic which is on many people's mind. So let's address it, and hopefully we will have video before the midterm. Maybe it will help somebody to make up their mind, or help somebody to accept somebody else's point of view and stuff.
As they say, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Right.
The other part of this, I think, that you brought up is that even many Bhakti practitioners, whether they're advanced or beginner, are these days following what is going on in the world in terms of politics. There's wars going on, there's big corporations that are taking over things, there's social media changes in social media, right? There's so many, and so these things that are happening in the world, first of all, it's very accessible. We know we can read various perspectives on a topic, and we can also start to develop our own thoughts on it, our own ideology towards it. So yeah, how does someone who is a Bhakti practitioner look at these world events, things that are going on around the world, and how does one approach those things? What is the approach that one should have? Because I don't want to bury my head in the sand, right? I don't want to pretend like it all doesn't exist. Even being here we live in Mayapur, which is this tiny little spiritual oasis where really we could be removed from all the problems of the world, it still affects us. I mean, your family, I believe, is from Ukraine, right?
I'm from Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah. So whatever's going on in the world, it still has its effect on us, and we want to have maybe keep our finger on the pulse of where the world is going and what is happening. I mean, even I've heard lectures of Srila Prabhupada, our teacher's teacher, where he brings up, he knew who was the president at that time. I think it was Reagan, Mr. Reagan or Mr. Nixon. Yeah. So he kept his pulse on what was going on, and continuously with the view of, there's a different lens. And what is that lens? What is that lens that allows us to see, as you said, the absolute within it all, those things that are unchanging, and to see the constant changing that may happen, and I would add to see a bigger picture of it all, because we can get so kind of tied up in the details of things, and we can lose ourselves in it.
Exactly. Yeah. I just saw, I thought maybe we spend one time look through it, but I saw the podcast, the conversation between Bill Maher and Kid Rock. So they are completely different. How do you say? Yes, side of the spectrum. Not really. Bill Maher is left, but he's like very moderate. He anti-woke culture, but at the same he's a Democrat. Basically, yesterday he was saying that if this election, like this is, we cannot do anything, that the democracy will die. But he was so dramatic, not in this conversation, but in his real-time, show.
Mm-hmm.
He said, like, if you don't vote right, then we basically will be in dictatorship. And he kind of put it in a very, very bleak colors, like really dark future awaits, and said, well, we cannot do it. So basically, we cannot do anything about it. It's what is going to happen. Anyway, but in this conversation, they were very respectful. One is supporter of Trump, Kid Rock. He said, I don't like Trump. So Bill Maher was like jumping, like very happy, almost like jumping on this. He said, I love Trump. I don't like. And they're like, oh, yeah. But they decided, okay, we will not try to convince one another. It was a little bit, sliding very, very subtly, but not in a gotcha type of way, but more in a friendly. I mean, these guys were wasted. I mean, they smoke weed and they drank beer. I mean, this is a whole podcast like this. These guys are like, I think. Anyway, but they managed to keep the conversation going. I was very
like a civil conversation.
Going. Sometimes a little bit like hanging in the air, but they said, if we are friends, we should not lose friendship because we are on a different side of the aisle. We could keep our beliefs, but at the same time be friends. I know a lot of people lost their friends. I know devotees, the Bhakti practitioners lost their friends and actively hate one another because they're on different side of the aisle. And I'm pretty sure whoever watches this podcast can, relate. But relate to it. But how to, I think first and foremost what we want to discuss today, how to be able to accept what other person's beliefs are and be able to call him or her out on it in a respectful way if it's like completely something, bizarre. Somebody just claiming that fire is cold, ice cold, and teaches others. Say, okay, this is fire. Please touch the fire. It's cold, And somebody who touches it means person not only harming oneself but also harming others. If somebody says just take drugs and this is the way for enlightenment, and if person is influential, naturally will be, it's not just his or her belief, but it's a big influence on others. So instead of canceling such a person or completely shutting the person down, there need to be somebody who can in civil debate be able to actually show that this is ridiculous and it doesn't make any sense. So but without assassinating person's character. I think this is Christian notion, hate the sin, not the sinner.
Right.
So don't hate the person. You might hate person's beliefs, but you don't need to hate the persons. You don't need to call others deplorable. You don't need to call others, stupid because they don't think and they don't believe what you believe. And I think this is the main kind of denominator, I think, which would be the main topic or the main outcome which I thought I want to bring in our conversation.
One of the things that we live in this age of Kali, right? And Kali means quarrel, and Kali means hypocrisy. So as much as quarrel can happen, that much this kind of dark age of Kali becomes more powerful. And the other side of it is to see the hypocrisy of whether it be a democratic government, whether it be a this side or that side, or whatever, communist government, of course, but to see the hypocrisy that goes on in the name of the people, in the name of serving the population or whatever. It's already been said that this is an age of hypocrisy, and you see that hypocrisy on the highest levels. So oftentimes when I read something, I'm trying to decipher how much of this is some type of indoctrination, some type of propaganda from either side, from whatever side it's being presented from, and how much of it may be, how do I decipher the little bit of truth that may lay there? Because in the story of the Bhagavatam, Kali was beating the bull, right? And this bull represented Dharma, represented religion, represented, the true being, the true nature of being. And all three legs were broken. The three legs that were broken were if you remind me, but mercy, right? Cleanliness and austerity were the three legs that were broken. And the one leg that was left standing a little bit was truth, right? And this personality of Kali was beating this bull, and it's just standing on this little bit of truth. So there is some truth in there. Like you said, there is something that's absolute, that's within it all. And how do we, obviously in some places it's very much covered, in other places it's less covered. But one thing that I feel that specifically getting too tied up into my side versus your side, it creates division. It creates that quarrel, and the kind of demoniac atmosphere is feeding off of that quarrel. So if I truly want to have a conversation with someone who is of a different ideology, different belief system, whatever it is, other side of the spectrum, you could say, I would say, first of all, what do we have in common? What do we have in common? Because there's obviously something in common that has brought us to the discussion, right? The other part of it, I would say, is that if there is, say we're talking about some problem, right? Most of the times when a discussion is happening, people just want to be right. And they don't want to solve the problem. I just want to be right. And so I want to put down the other person, That's not a way to have a conversation. It's not a conversation at all. So what is the problem? What is the issue? What do we agree on regarding this issue? And then we can truly look at it and try to solve a problem that's going on there. But this division that is created, whether it be because I belong to this religion, or I belong to this philosophy, or I belong to this type of political spectrum, like these things, they're changing, right? They can change and they can be nuanced, and it's not so black or white, and people aren't black or white. So I don't want to, we shouldn't label anyone as they're that, and because they're that, that's it. I label them like that, and I can't, even be civil with them. That's just creates more quarrel, it creates more hatred, and that's what creates the strength of demoniac forces. It gives them fuel to become more powerful.
Yeah, I think what you said, this is basically the essence, right? To accept somebody else as a fellow human being who just have different opinion, and try to understand why, try to see the reason, and try to learn, not necessarily just convert person and just push my opinion down somebody's throat. And I think if everybody would try to be like this, okay, if somebody is again attacking, killing your family, like I'm not advocating for the civil conversation in this situation. Maybe somewhere down the line, if it is war, like we have war now between Ukraine and Russia, it's a very, very complicated thing. The lives are at stake, people are dying. But when we're talking about just political discourse, in most of the cases, you didn't attack me, I didn't attack you. It's just we have different beliefs. So the best way is for me to, if we both come with open mind and try to learn from one another, and as a humility is very important quality, not being proud and be humble, and with humility try to understand and try to learn. And if it doesn't make sense, you say, listen, it doesn't make sense to me. So at this point, you present your point of view, and if other person say, no, it doesn't make sense to me, so say, listen, so at this point, we just disagree, and we agree to disagree. Let's move to another topic, let's talk about abortion, for example. So, one person believes it's a woman's choice to do abortion, another person sees it as you killing a baby in the womb. And we could go from religious point of view, we could go from secular point of view. So you try to understand, okay, from religious point of view, it is a murder, basically. But at the same time, what is the reality of it? First of all, how you can not get pregnant when you don't want to get pregnant, right? Unless you're raped or, violated, which is like, I think on a practical level, that should be exempted. If somebody, sexually assault somebody else and the person just doesn't have choice, maybe this is a different story when somebody have a consensual sexual relationship and they just don't bother to use, contraception, and then they say, whatever, it's a level of negligence. So, you don't have to end up like this, and there's a ways how to prevent it. So you talk about it, and then You say, I understand, if you don't want to have a child, there's the steps you can do before even considering abortion. Just not get yourself into this position. But if somebody absolutely wants to do abortion, then, you know, if you forbid them, they will do it anyway. They put their life at risk. They put, you know, their life, because the baby is anyway, you know, going to die. So how to find balance? I don't have answers, absolutely, but I have my belief about it. But I understand other side
You'd
also.
be open to a
I
conversation.
understand why it's, if person is not religious, it's very difficult if they don't accept that this is life which is in the womb. They don't accept it. They don't understand the soul comes into the womb as soon as you know, semen and you know, ovaries kind of interact, and as soon as and the smallest kind of conception, as long as you kind of consider pregnant, soul is already there, person is already there, you know. So this is religious understanding, at least Vedic religion. I assume it's most probably other religions also. So that's very different from a secular understanding. So, but yeah, you don't have to be religious. You can have your belief. So need to find something, need to find some solution which is practical in today's world, and it will be different for different countries. Some countries have much stricter law. I mean, in Dubai, basically, you know, I've heard you cannot have sex with anybody who is not your wife. And people go to Dubai, people like Dubai, you know, but they have culture which is so conservative, it's beyond conservative, you know. You cannot, you know, if you watch porno there, you know, you go to jail. If you swear, you go to jail. If you have sex with somebody else, then if it's your girlfriend but you're not married, you go to jail. You know, if you have any kind of drugs, you know, you go to jail. If you have alcohol not in designated places, and people go to Dubai. Nobody boycotts Dubai, you know. Everybody is happy to go to Dubai and have a good time there, you know. It's a very prosperous city. But yeah, they are mega conservatives. So this is definitely the way how civilization can live. They don't have crime. I mean, crime is all times low there. They don't have poverty there, you know. So this is one thing. Now you could look at United States, where people defecated on the streets, you know, shoving each other, you know, in New York subway, under the train, and it's kind of more free, but then you have less security, more drug abuse, fentanyl, death, you know, ODs. A lot of people just die. It's so much. So what is the balance and where you want to actually kind of push the scale? And again, this is a social issue. It's not a religious issue. Of course, Dubai, for example, or, you know, a lot of Middle Eastern countries, some take it to super extreme, you know, like what's happening in Iran now, you know, just it's a huge reversal. But I think Dubai is a very good example where it's very strictly Muslim country, very, very, with very strong boundaries, super prosperous, super fun at the same time, you know, how they manage it. So it's possible. To be completely liberal and have order, I haven't seen it yet, actually, because the more chaos, the less control of the government, police and everything, then naturally people who are good feel themselves kind of more free, but people who are bad, you know, bad elements, criminals, they also feel themselves more free, and they prey on everybody else, you know. So that's it's very, very it's very different different outcome. Again, I'm just trying to analyze different situations. Absolutely. And we started with abortion, we ended up with crime, but yeah.
Well, as you were speaking about that, I was thinking, what are the things first of all, there's certain hot topics, right? There's certain hot topics, right? Like abortion is definitely one of them. You know, there's many others that certain hot topics that, especially in America, but around the world, I feel like these things, as there's something else going on, as there's some other corporation taking over or some corporate political ties going on somewhere between something, these hot topics are thrown into the discussion, right? So that it stirs up, this is my feeling behind it, is that let people keep discussing about this topic. This is taking over the news while something else is going on, and we're getting more and more power, and we're becoming more and more, whatever it is. And, Corona was just the hot topic, a couple of years ago. Now it's like, suddenly nobody has any more discussion about it.
They say Putin canceled Corona.
Exactly,
Right.
So there's always like this new topic, and the new topic, obviously the war that's going on is like probably one of the biggest things on people's mind right now, because, but there have been wars going on that America's been involved with for my whole life, and we didn't really get that caught up into it the way we are now. Right? Syria has been going through what they've been going through, and so many places have been going through what they've been going through. And we don't really relate to it. People don't really, it's not interesting enough. So it's been kind of like, it's not been the focus.
Because it's kind of a little bit distant, right? Somewhere in the Middle East.
And maybe it doesn't like catch people's attention enough, right? So everything that's being done is like, how do I catch people's attention? How do I keep my ratings up? And the old magician trick is like, look at this hand while I take whatever you have from this hand, So this has been going on, and I feel like as a devotional practitioner, as a bhakta, I want to be, I want to, like I said, not have my head in the sand, but I also don't want to get completely drawn into whatever narrative that is being pushed at me, and then avoid the other thing, or not see the other thing, because there is a bigger picture of things going on. I just want to push back for a minute on the greatness of Dubai, it's being built on like slavery, basically, like Indian, Bangladeshi, Nepali, like people go there and basically are treated like slaves for this to be built. So, what place is perfect, right? Is there anywhere that is perfect? Is there anywhere that is like, I was gonna ask you, what do you think about a nation like the Scandinavian countries, which are very liberal, right? Which give a lot of rights to all types of people, men, women, or whatever gender. What do you think? They seem to be running quite well, like, somewhat socialist countries that give a lot of means to the people. And how long can that run? I don't know, but it seems like things work pretty well. And my wife is from Sweden, and just opening the conversation.
That's true.
For that.
That's true. Yeah, going back to Dubai, I'm not necessarily condoning how it was built. I'm just saying, like, most of the people don't mind going to Dubai. They feel themselves super safe. Nobody worries about, they go to Dubai. If you don't misbehave, don't do any nonsense, it's basically the safest place on earth. You never worried of being mugged or, on the street or raped or something like that, So that's basically was the gist. But yeah, I don't really know the history of how it was built good enough to justify that.
What you were saying is that, a belief system can be in place and it can still be open to people coming and participating and enjoying enjoying a place and enjoying the things that are being offered there, without 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 it being stifling or like
Right,
choking
you
them.
don't need to be Muslim to go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't persecute
Yeah.
other religions. I know a
Yeah.
lot of Bhaktas are living there, and they feel themselves very, welcome there. Certain things you just don't do
Yeah.
because there's a certain rules, so you don't disrespect. But there's a lot of freedoms. Going back to Scandinavia, I don't know. I mean, I know Europe. I lived in Germany for many years, and I know it's definitely quite comfortable in terms of safety, in terms of cleanliness, and I'm pretty sure Scandinavia must be even, little bit up the notch. I think Norway is basically like Dubai, but just they also have oil, and they divided their revenues among all core population. But they super. I think both Scandinavia, at least Norway, you cannot become Norwegian. Nobody can just come and become Norwegian. For example, again, that's because I was just having a conversation with somebody who lives there and said, you will be always outsider because they care about their people so much, so they protect their sanctity and their well-being beyond. As we say, charity begins at home. And I know when you in a destitute situation and you fleeing from some countries, you appreciate if you are given shelter somewhere. That's, again, there's no black and white, right? So it's amazing. But then you have somebody who just comes, gets welcome, and then take advantage of situation, become criminal, or act against. So you're not actually fleeing, but then you look, okay, there's opportunity to mess up some other people on a different level in different country. So with the good elements, therefore I think the vetting of those who come in as immigrants in different countries should be really clear, and as long as people remain grateful, as long as people remain respectful of the rules of the land, I think it all can work out. But as soon as it become, they become criminals, they become disrespectful, they denounce the very country which gave them shelter, be it America, be it Europe, be it anything else. That's just you don't want a person who come to your house, you open the door of your house, and he just put his legs on the table and order you around and say, well, your dinner sucks, I want pizza, what you give me, like that. Nobody, I would not tolerate such person in my house. You would not tolerate person in your house, most probably.
If they make the pizza. Yes.
Right. So there's I think it's a common sense in this sense. So I'm pretty sure in those countries they have something right for sure. It's functioning. The economy works well. People are happy. But I've heard a lot of I've heard a lot of suicide in these countries also for some reason.
Well, one thing I would compare, these two examples. One is a conservative country that has a religion, right? That lives according to specific religion, right? But they're open to others coming. And then there's another, the other side, which is my understanding of the Scandinavian countries. They're very sectarian, and there's no God really. There's secular. Sorry, there's no God, right? There's and in a way, there's almost like a fear of religion and people bringing in any type of religion, and they're maybe somewhat tolerant of it to more or less degree, but they're not encouraging it in any way, right? It's very secular. So one side has this belief in God, and it's you can come here and do your thing, but don't talk about God unless you believe in our God, right? You don't propagate your own religion or your own belief system or whatever. You come enjoy, spend your money, but we believe in one specific name of God, right? That's like one side. And then there's another side, which is like, we don't want God here. We don't want anyone believing in God. And so I know I believe in France, there's like control of whether people can dress a certain way in public or not, show their spirit, their kind of religious, dress and things like that externally, because it's like, no, we don't want that, it creates division or whatever. So I'm just comparing the two places, like where there's almost this intolerance, whether you believe or whether you don't believe. Sometimes there's this intolerance created, in this and how can we? Yeah, I'm just.
I think people need to take their heads out of their asses, to be honest. So for me, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure for you, if I have somebody who is Christian or somebody who is Muslim, I respect the hell out of these people if they're serious. I don't want to convert them to, I don't need to convert them being Hindu. I don't feel any necessity. I just respect. If they are not fanatical, they don't try to push their religion, oh, my religion is better than yours. Again, you don't want to deal with fanatics, I think, in any way. Either it will be religious fanatics, it would be LGBTQ fanatics, it would be woke fanatics, it would be white supremacist fanatics, it would be KKK fanatics, you have Nazis. It's all extremes which ultimately militant, and they're ready to eliminate the opponent. And I think why? I strongly believe in what I believe. I believe in teachings of Bhagavad Gita, teaching of the Vedas. I understand that Krishna is God, and it's another name of God, and the name in Sanskrit means all attractive, but I understand Allah speaks about the same God, but in a more awe and reverence, different aspect. God is one person, like Muslims sometimes they try to catch Christians. What is this Trinity? So it's a very, very common argument, how three almighty beings can coexist. But I think also Christians, they misunderstand that it's not. And then of course Muslims take it. Again, those who just want to incite some kind of, as you said, we need to look what is common. And as we talked, I think in our previous podcast, learn who God is, learn to serve Him, learn to love Him, and this is true for everything. So I think that's the bottom line. If you're able to respect others, if I would go to Dubai, I'm not trying. Okay, I need to liberate this country, make everybody Hindu. But look at India. There's a lot of Muslim communities and Hindu communities in most of the cases, and even Christian communities like in South. In most of the cases, they coexist. Sometimes crazy people incite riots, and you have like something which happened in Bangladesh. But Bangladesh is kind of predominantly it's a Muslim state, and then normal state doesn't have problem with other religion. But again, you have fanatics, and then fanatics they create violence, and so that's the point. There have been Christian fanatics, there's been Muslim fanatics, there's been Christian fanatics, there's been
atheist fanatics,
there have been Nazis, all the fanatics, or like the Antifa, kind of anti-fascists, but they're like fascists in their own right. They're also fanatics and militants, and create a lot of violence. So it's not really I think if you are sane person, you would have your strong core, your belief, and you will let others be, and you will respect others for their beliefs. And if you cannot accept somebody else, well, you would engage in argument or in discussion, in civil discourse, where you can try, like you have this Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, they will speak about, one is, devout atheist, and and he's a devout Christian. And
I don't know how you can be a devout atheist.
He can. It's amazing. Yeah, that's true. You can
What
laugh.
do you devout to, right?
It's funny, right?
No, I know. It's a
But
good word.
It is what it is.
Yeah. No, they have great conversations, and it's very fascinating and very civil, and you know, I think one thing that you said also made a lot of sense to me is if I am, and this has been a theme for us, I think, is if I am stable and I'm grounded in my belief and in my practices and in my devotion and in my focus, then I won't get intimidated by someone else. Someone else's discussion won't intimidate me. Now, at the same time, in a mood of humility, I'm ready to learn from someone else, especially if there's a mutual respect there on some level, that I'm, ready to learn something and ready to share what I am. And because I found that in conversations with some friends, especially, I would get intimidated sometimes, I would get a bit like riled up, and what I realized, passionate is one thing.
Defensive?
One thing, passionate, sometimes you just get passionate, start talking, and that's one thing, but to get defensive of something. And what I saw within myself is that there's a part of me that is not sure, and so something that they said triggered me. Something they said triggered me to become defensive of, whether it be, a specific philosophical point or something. And I looked at it closely and I started to realize, okay, well, I'm not that stable in this philosophical point. I said something, or said something that I felt like I was supposed to say or supposed to stand up for, but I'm not actually sure what I feel about this. And so that's why I was allowed to become, triggered by what this person said. And it caused me, I think for me at least, I look at those places where I've become triggered by somebody else, what they said, and then let me just look into that point within myself and see, what I can learn from this. Is there deeper that I can go into this? Because obviously something is not, and I would say this, like you said you would be happy to have a conversation with a wide spectrum of people. But a person that I would have a hard time having conversations with is a devout atheist. You know why? Because I'm not really sure if I believe in God or not. When it really comes down to it, I do. I do. I practice I live this lifestyle. I love Krishna. I feel Krishna's reciprocation with me, and at the same time, my whole process is, do I really believe? To the degree that I have faith, to that degree that reciprocation comes. And to the degree that I have less and less faith, to that degree I don't feel the connection. So there's a little atheist in me that is running around that wants to find happiness in everything else besides the source of all happiness, besides the source of all love. There is that within me. And that's why I've searched, whether it be in politics, whether it be in sex, whether it be in drugs, whether it be in societies and a community or something, to find that fulfillment, find that fulfillment in my life. Oh, this makes me whole. But no, there's a part of me that's missing, and that most important part of me is the source of everything. And because I'm searching for that within everything else, to that degree, I'm a non-believer, you could say, And so because of that, I feel like and I have had conversations with even, with people who don't believe in God, and it takes a lot for me to actually open up to that conversation and be open to it, and that's because there's a part of me that's intimidated by that.
Wow, it's an interesting point. Yeah, very interesting. And I think that's it's very telling why people. I think that they're exactly what we are not 100% sure for whatever reason, and then when somebody challenges it and we don't have enough either faith or knowledge to back it up, then
and maybe realization too,
Yeah.
right? Because I may have the knowledge, I may be able to quote something, you know, but the realization of that holds so much weight, and I may not have that realization, and so I'm, you know, triggered by it.
But for me personally, I feel okay. Realization, I'm far away from realizing a lot of things, but in conversation, we use logic and argument most of the time, which is tarko pratishta. You know, it's logic and argument. It's not something you can base your life on, but when somebody brings, especially with atheists, they also don't they definitely don't have strong beliefs, they don't have realization, because it's not possible to have realization that God does not exist. It's, you know, as we discussed, realization of nothing is very, very tough, you know. It's much more like if fire burns, you can, you know, it's
True.
fire, it's true, you can have something, but if somebody says, I don't believe that fire is burning, you know, so he doesn't have any substance to hold on to. He just denies the fact which he does not believe in, but he doesn't have anything opposite to say. So that basically you argue with people, or you discuss with person who also doesn't actually have much less realization, because and then it comes back to either faith or knowledge. Of course, when you have realization, but even if you have realization, you cannot express it in a discussion. Then for other people, it's not, you know, like usually you don't sit and just argue for the sake of argument. It's either you do it for the benefit of others, because for your or for my sake, you know, if there's a really argument, not just open conversation where we respectfully try to learn from one another, there's no value in it, you know. Value of debate is that others learn something from it, you know, like debate means, yeah, you're still respectful, but you like really go and try to establish certain points. And bhakti is, you know, scientifically is a progression of faith. So, you know, the firm faith is actually very high level of bhakti, nishtha, you know. So anartha nivriti is something where faith and hence realization, because I think realization bring up the faith to a different level, you know. So, you know, if you touch the fire and you know it burns, your faith in the fire burns is very strong. You have realization of it, you know. If it's just, you know, I told my son that the fire burns, and then somebody else tell him, no, fire actually liquid, you know, it makes you wet. He didn't experience the fire, so it's 50-50 kind of, you know. So that until you experience. So I think the knowledge in this, you know, reading, understanding, engaging, intelligence, I think it's so important to kind of fortify oneself, you know, from being shaken, I guess, in the initial stage before that's what helps me, you know. My realization is very meager also, you know, but because I study a lot, I understand kind of their basic knowledge, and I accept it makes sense to me, then this is good enough in most of the cases, you know. But when you remain dry in your personal practice, then you start looking for something, because we all want some kind of experience, right? Experience is important. Mm-hmm. Luckily, in Bhakti you have a lot of ways to experience, primarily kirtan and, you know, amazing deities, beautiful, you know, murtis in the temple. So there's a lot of things where senses can be engaged, and some kind of emotional connection other than just dry knowledge. So that both are present, and then you kind of fortify it. Whereas if it's just dry knowledge, and atheist doesn't have anything, you know, they just have knowledge. There's no other than engaging one's senses in pleasure of the senses, which it's available to everybody. Except, including the animals, pigs and dogs, and so whatever we can experience sensually, any animal can experience what makes a difference. As humans, we have ability to experience way higher pleasure and realization, which is not derived from contact of the senses with the sense object. So that's where anybody who practices any religion has something, and if they don't, they usually become fanatics, because then they just, I just want to believe in it, and the best way for me to believe in it, it just makes others to believe in it. So the bigger the crowd,
or to hate others that don't believe in it.
and then hate others because they kind of shaken me, and I validate myself. The bigger the crowd, the more I feel validated that I'm part of it, and this is where I guess fanaticism comes from.
I have a question for you, because you seem, I from knowing you, I think you take in a lot, like you're listening to various different places and sources. And I also know that you also listen to a lot of Bhakti teachers, and so how do you balance that? Like, how do you balance taking in things from, say, various podcasts or the news or the media or like that, and then also taking in things from Bhakti teachers and, how do you process it? How do you digest these things?
To be honest, I would be happy if I could only take things from Bhakti teachers, and if I would be 100% satisfied with it, I would just do only this, But my inquisitive mind and my, lack of spiritual taste, for a long time. So I could listen to some lectures or be in a kirtan, whatever, some part of the day, but then I just my mind wants to engage in something, and then I go to the topics which kind of give some engagement to my intelligence, and ultimately it's not very helpful for me being absorbed in Bhakti, but at the same time it helps me, as you said, be current and try to understand and appreciate other people. So I look at the qualities. So I appreciate the qualities of honesty, humility, compassion, religiosity, even different religiosity. Integrity. So I listen to Christian podcasts, I listen to Muslim podcasts, and I admire when people quote their shastras, quote their scriptures, and they also look at different social issue through the eyes of Bible, through the eyes of Quran, Quran, is it properly? Yeah. And I admire the ability of, and then you again have person who stand up to the establishment, and as you said, integrity, don't get the establishment bow them and put them on their knees just because otherwise they will be cancelled because they speak out their minds. So there's a lot of inspiration for me how to be a better human being on different levels. So that's what I take from there.
Yeah, well, that's why we have our Bhakti zone, right? Because we hope to be of integrity. We hope to be honest with each other, with anyone that happens to listen to this. We hope to be, inquisitive, humble, ready to learn, ready to see different perspectives. And also, we hope, I think, to talk about issues that are relevant and that are there in the world, and not pretend like they don't exist and sweep them under the rug and pretend like, like it's all Satchidananda all the time, Sometimes there's some Sat shit and there's something, there's something else going on there that but like we're exploring that for us to go deeper, for us to grow and progress through these various stages of devotion, you know, and let's look at the anarthas, right? If we're at a state, if we're kind of at this stage of this cleansing, then let's look at what needs to be cleansed, right? What needs to be cleansed, and that's why I think we've gravitated towards each other and to have these conversations, because, you know, we hope to talk about things that may upset people. It may upset some people, you know, things that you know we say, and hopefully we can be open to also questioning those things, or questioning our own beliefs or ideas around something, that, you know, ready to be humble and be you know, taught some other way. But yeah, I think it's you know, exciting, fun, you know, maybe sometimes can be, you know, maybe difficult at points, but that's how we grow.
So, you know, interesting. As we start our conversation today, we talk about your midterms election and this. I think nobody really. We didn't come to tell you guys to whom you have to vote, what you believe. Just don't hate one another. You know, be able to build up communication. Don't try to shut off one another. Keep open conversation. Keep learning from one another, and basically become better human beings with kind of opposing views, and see where, you know, I can improve. I need to see where I can improve. You see where you can improve, and like this we uplift one another instead of, you know, pushing each other to dirt and try to, you know, desecrate one another. That's what's, you know, the mood which I'm picking up.
Don't be a fanatic. Don't be a fanatic.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't be. I think it's a good way to finish out today.
All right.
Okay, Sensish.
Thank you.